that is here as well, but I don't want to.
No.
I've already taken up 2 of my 15 minutes, so there we go. How many of you have a cell phone? How many of you don't have a cell phone? Okay. Go to sleep for about 5 minutes, okay? Those of you who have a cell phone, I want you to pull it out. Your Excellency, come on in. I'm just getting started. There's no ride in the streets as of yet. Come on in and have a seat as our special guest. Do you have your cell phones? Do you know how to get on the World Wide Web? Can I get you to go www.Shevchenko Foundation? Right now. Just go there. Shevchenko Foundation. Lots of people are looking at me strangely, like I'm asking for something. If I asked you what the score in the Blue Jays game was, we could tell you really quickly what that is, because it's 2-1 for Cleveland in the whatever inning it is there. So we know how to get there. Are you there? I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to try and add this to your phone so that it appears as one of the applications on your phone. I've got this wonderful phone, and the chauffeur in our beautiful purple color and yellow color is there. Do you know how to do that? It's very easy. If you have an antiquated device like mine called a BlackBerry, you just hit the 3 dots at the end, and then it says, do I add this to my cell phone? If you have something like an Apple, how many of you got that? An Apple. You hit on that same 3 dots, and there'll be a little box with a little arrow in it. That arrow says, add this to my cell phone. How many of you have done that? Just takes a minute. Bookmark. Add it as a bookmark. That's just as good. Add it as a book. Do people know how to add this as a bookmark? Yes, they do, because I know you have all kinds of little bookmarks that you use all the time when you're listening to speakers and you want to distract yourselves. So the speakers know this innately, that's what you've got. All right. So how many of you ever donated to the Shevchenko Foundation? That's good. That's about 10% of you. I need to know why the rest of you haven't, but now I've given you an annual report for those that didn't know what we are. And now I've also given you a place to find us. And what's interesting about that place is if you go on there, all of you in this room have directed students there to ask us for grants. So now you can actually download for them and add as a bookmark for them. If they want to apply for a grant, they can just go there in about 2 minutes and apply for a grant. Or perhaps you're interested in donating to the foundation. You can get on there in about 2 minutes and actually go to how do I donate to the foundation and save taxes. We put that in there. You donate to save taxes. And in about a second after that, you can determine whether or not you live in a province that you remember that you live in. So if you live in the province of Ontario, you'll hit the province of Ontario, and you will see that the foundation is calculated for you what tax savings you would have if you donated $1,000 to the foundation. How many of you have wills? How many of you have wills? Shockingly, that's probably 10% of the people in the room. That's because the rest of you must think you're never going to die. I want to know what you're eating. I want to know what your nutrition is, because quite frankly, I have a will, but I have no current expectation of an immediate demise for me. But I have a will. Why? Because I would like my wishes respected after I pass away. I'd like my children to respect those wishes. So if you go in there, you will see how we have laid out for you how to do that before you die. Because we know that when you die, CRA, the Canada Revenue Agency, will immediately take the taxes from you, and then whatever noble thing you left the money for, 100% of my money to CIUS, the government's already taken their share before CIUS got there. Had you, as this app will show you, had you known that you could have donated this in your lifetime, reduced your immediate taxes, increased your donation to CIUS and other organizations, this would have been very beneficial to the Ukrainian community and would have been very beneficial to the cause of Ukrainian education in the world. So now that you know, hopefully you will never be able to sleep peacefully again until you've done your wills and until you have figured this out and started to donate. So what is community outreach? Community outreach is getting the message out to people who are stakeholders. That's what community outreach is. It's trying to get your message to people that may not understand who you are, and what you believe in. It turns out that the Shevchenko Foundation is interested in being singularly the best foundation in the country, not Ukrainian-Canadian Foundation, but the best foundation in the country with a vision to ensure that Ukrainian culture in Canada is promulgated, accepted, celebrated for the benefit of all Canadians, because our culture is part of Canada. The stories we have are part of Canada, and so we market the Shevchenko Foundation not to these wonderful people in the room who are part of the education elite of our country in the fields that we're looking at today, but everybody, because everybody has an interest in the Shevchenko Foundation. How does it tie into education? That's kind of a good question. We have 4 pillars that we act under in the foundation: the pillar of arts, the pillar of education, the pillar of community development, and the pillar of heritage. We know in the arts, that you know probably what that would entail. Well, lots of people who like to sing, lots of people who like to dance, but there are also visual artists. There's a few of them in the room here I know very well that have collaborated with the Shevchenko Foundation. That also encompasses the world of literature. So some of the people in this room have, in fact, applied to try and win the Kobzar Literary Award. At the time that we announced that award 12 years ago, it was equal to the highest awarded book prize of $25,000 in Canada to a Canadian writer who would write on a Ukrainian-Canadian theme, or where that theme was shown to basically be an important theme throughout a book. And since that time, people like Dr. Miroslav Shkandry, for one, and others have actually submitted some of their nonfiction works. The recent book on Avraменko actually was shortlisted. So it encompasses fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and even theater. Why is that important? Well, we want to encourage our writers. We want to encourage our academic writers. But more than just encourage them, why did you write those words on that page? Why did you do that? Because you wanted to inspire other people. If nobody ever reads your book, how do they get inspired? So one of the, if you will, themes behind the foundation, let's get this out. Let's get that book out. It's part of community outreach. So you have to ask yourself in your own organization, how are you doing to get that out there? The pillar of education seems like a no-brainer because the Shevchenko Foundation has been around since 1963. Started out, its first grants totaled about $500,000. And we've since that time contributed almost $10 million back to the community, investing in the community. But education always has been a pillar. So there's some people in this room that would have received bursaries when they were going in full-time studies into Ukrainian programs. So we know that's a no-brainer. But what we also do is we're concerned a little bit, and we'll talk about that, about people who are fairly young who really don't understand how to get involved with Ukrainian education in Canada or why it would motivate them. And so we have a small subsidy program for students, and we've had over 100 take advantage of this, that allows them to go to Ukraine, and they get a small subsidy towards their tuition towards courses in Lviv and Kyiv. The theory being that young, energetic, randy men and women between the ages of 18 and 26 will meet other young, randy, and energetic men and women in Ukraine while they study and get excited about being not only Ukrainian and having that heritage, but perhaps also being inspired to pursue that education further. We just have to do more of that, which is why, looking back, we have a $20 million capital campaign underway. So I'm probably going to ask all of you for money by the end of the evening. In fact, I'm going to ask for the money now, because why delay it? Why spoil your supper? I'll ask for it now, which is another reason why I'm trying to get to you in this sort of community outreach. The third pillar is the area of heritage. We have archives all across the country that are slowly degrading into dust. And part of the role of the foundation is to assist in preserving some of these archives. not only preserving those archives, but potentially working with museums and creating new museums so that these things can see the light of day and go across the country, which is another reason why we're going to the community to ask for $20 million more so that we can effectuate some of this interface between archives, between museums that don't necessarily need archival material, but other material with the greater community, not just the Ukrainian community, the greater Canadian community. You know, it's still a remarkable achievement. Nadia remembers this, and so does Oya, that one of the greatest ever exhibitions was at the Royal Ontario Museum, largely spearheaded by James Temerte with the ROM. And I remember the first conversations. The first conversations were basically, why would we ever do a Ukrainian exhibit? Who would be interested? Mr. Temerte stuck his neck out, but he also came to the foundation and others and said, we need to see that there's broad-based community support. As a result of that exhibit, it broke all the records of the Royal Ontario Museum. All records from inception. The Ukrainian-Canadian exhibit, that one was the Scythian exhibit, was so consumed by non-Ukrainians in this country and in the United States that it broke all records. We have something to share. We have something to share in our music. We have something to share in our dance, in our culinary arts. We even share how we pray to God through our sacred music. So there's a lot to share. I'm down to about 2 minutes, 3 minutes? 3 minutes. My son, Roman Hladyshevsky, is in grade 12. He has met very few of the academics that teach anywhere, other than his teachers in school. Exception, I think, Hladyshevsky he's seen a few times, who's made a few cruises through high schools and elsewhere. Why is the course in witchcraft one of the highest rated, desired courses by university students? It means nothing to an engineer to have witchcraft to build a bridge, or for a lawyer, somebody may argue otherwise. Modern medicine no longer requires it. It's an unnecessary course. The problem that Ukrainian education has is that for the average child that comes, and then as a young adult that comes to university, of which in this university there would be 3,000 or 4,000 students of Ukrainian heritage, it's not that they don't like Ukrainian, it's just not necessary to what they have to do as engineers, as doctors, as lawyers, as dentists, as teachers, which puzzles me because there are hundreds of people in education programs in Western Canada that will become teachers that have Ukrainian heritage. Somehow we need to get in their faces. There's a few hundred students in the Ukrainian University Students Club here. How are we meeting with them? How are we encouraging them to study? What are we doing? Are we actually interfacing with them, the brilliant minds in this room, with the young people that would love to talk to you if they only knew how they could approach you? Well, that's a tough thing to do as a volunteer. I do it all the time. It's very tough just to stand here in a nervous way and talk to you. But you have to overcome that, and you have to basically be that, if you will, driving force in that child's life. And unless you do that, or you do that, or you do that, nobody else is going to do it for you. The future of all these programs will never be as bright as they really could be or could have been. So I'm going to leave it off there, because to me, somehow this issue of strict MA and PhD driven students will always be there. The Shevchenko Foundation will always be there to assist them in providing bursaries and scholarships. But they are a small segment of the people that would like to connect with their culture and with their heritage, some of whom will have very unquote Ukrainian parents, but who will be turned on to the subject matter, even though it's not necessary for them. So one of the themes for me is, how do you make that unnecessary part of their life a part of their life? You know, it's interesting. We don't seem to have any problem with Ukrainian Orthodox priests or Ukrainian Catholic priests going out into the bilingual programs to talk to the kids in elementary school, in junior high, in high school. Why would they go there? Well, because they're actually talking to Christian children, and they actually have something to say to them, something that they would like to be part of their life for the rest of their life. Well, education never leaves us, but we have to be part of their life, their everyday life, and we have to meet them. So that's the challenge that I sort of throw out there, and we can talk about ways to get out there through multimedia and the new media. I want you to spend some time, though, on that Shevchenko bookmark that you just put into your phones and look at it seriously to see, where do I fit in here, either as a consumer or a donor, because that's part of my community outreach to you. I'm going to end it there.